Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nothing New. This is the initial episode of Nothing New, and we have Neil Demon. I'm going to ask everyone to mute yourself if you're not already muted. Thank you. So Neil Denham was once a very desperate, tense, neurotic, and therefore understandably exhausted seeker. Quite by chance, Neil happened across a video of Jim Newman speaking about non-duality. There was an instant recognition of what was being shared as being far beyond a common non-duality discussion. So of course, he jumped right in at the deep end and ultimately did not emerge. Neil lives in Worcestershire, England, and spends most of his time avoiding people, places, and things that he does not enjoy as much as possible. He also likes to write and talk about this with anyone who is open to listening. Neil says that this is a rare and radical communication which comes out of nothing. There is nothing on offer here or any use to the seeker. Therefore, there's nothing that needs to be learned or understood in this message. It is simply a description of what becomes apparent when the seeker suddenly disappears. Neil also has written a book called Already Everything, a little book on seeking and liberation. Welcome, Neil. How are you?
Hi, Emerson. I'm good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
No, thanks for being here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to do a little chit chat, ask you to do an introduction, and then we're going to open up the stage for any questions, any Q&A. If you have a question, you can raise your hand, or you can just simply unmute yourself, and you can type in the text as well to chat if you want to. If you have any questions, go ahead, Neil, and make an introduction.
Sure. Oh, thank you. Well, I think just to reiterate what you said, I think the first thing to be clear on is this isn't a teaching, and I'm not a teacher. This is descriptive. It's a sharing about something very simple and very ordinary, but amazing. And I was a seeker, and I was looking for this mystical experience called liberation that I heard people talking about. And while I was seeking for this mystical experience that I imagined was going to be liberation, all of a sudden I wasn't anymore. And that's really all I can say about that. I think when we're talking about liberation, we're not talking about someone who can become liberated or who does indeed become liberated. Really what's being described or what's being shared is that which is seeking for liberation can suddenly just fall off the edge of a cliff and then suddenly be no more. And then you could say that liberation is revealed in a way, but it's not for anyone, because there's actually no one to become liberated in that sense. So this is a sharing about that freedom that seems to come with this energetic shift, but it's not for anyone. It's not personal in any way. And what was revealed here is that that apparent shift had nothing to do with me or my efforts to bring it about. Quite the contrary, it was actually my efforts to bring it about that seemed to be hiding the reality that this is, the natural reality that this is already. And that's really fundamentally the message. This is already. This actually needs nothing. There's nothing on offer here, because this needs nothing for it to be already naturally itself. And it's often described as that's the great joke in all of this, is that when the seeker or when the seeking, when the seeker disappears, if you like, what's recognized is there was actually never anything to find, because it is already. It's even the seeking for itself. And that's what became startlingly obvious when I was seeking. So yeah, I think that's about all I have to say about that at the moment.
Let's talk about that neurotic. Everybody wants to hear a story.
Sure.
Let's talk about that neurotic, desperate seeker and hitting that last house on the block.
Yeah, the last house on the block. Well, I mean, this is the story. I suppose you could say that there was always a sense that what was being looked for wasn't to be found within a teaching. I always felt, when I was a seeker, I always felt that I failed miserably following certain requirements that were supposed to move me towards this experience, liberation or enlightenment, and always felt that I failed miserably. And there was always more. That is the nature of the seeking, and of course the seeking comes out of this experience of separation, that I'm a separate person, that I have to find something in order to become whole and in order to become complete. So the seeking comes out of that apparent experience, and the nature of seeking is to seek. It's never satisfied, it never ends. And there was kind of a sense of that here, that whilst involved in those sorts of seeking activities, and so when I was involved in those sorts of seeking activities, there was a sense that it wasn't really going anywhere, that it was going around in circles. And I came across this message whilst I was seeking, and it just sort of took the wind out of my sails, shall we say, so to speak. Not that helps, not that there is a suggestion that one should stop seeking, because seeking can't stop. But in a way, I just sort of collided with this message head on, and I found myself with nowhere to go. So when I've talked about this message as being last house on the block for some people, for some seekers, there can be that sense of there's really nowhere else to go in that sense, and there can be for some people a sense or a resonance with this type of sharing, in that there can be a sense that the seeking isn't really going anywhere.
In that desperate attempt of hitting the wall over and over and over and over again, can you share a story about the apparent disappearance?
Yeah, I mean, there really isn't a lot to say about it, which the seeker would never really understand. It's the biggest non-event ever. It's not a happening, because of course what's seen in that is there was actually never anyone to become liberated. You could say liberation is all there is already. Wholeness is all there is already. And it's very simple and very ordinary. And I remember just being struck by the simplicity and the ordinariness and the obviousness of this. But there's really not a lot more to say about it, because in the end, what's revealed is there isn't a happening as such called liberation. There actually isn't a person to fall away in the first place. There's obviously there is an experience which feels very real of being a separate person who has to find something in order to become whole and become fulfilled. But it is completely illusory. So it really just it doesn't have any more significance about, I don't know, dreaming about eating popcorn last night. It's just not a thing in that sense.
Thank you so much. And we're going to open up the floor for any questions that you might have. You can type in the question, you can unmute yourself, you can say that I have a question, and then we're going to get Neil to answer that. I forgot earlier to let you know as well that this from now on every Friday we have a nothing's happening event every Friday, and we're going to announce a lot more shows later on. So if you have any questions, please don't be shy, and Neil is here to answer any questions about nothing. I have a question. Another one is, tell me about the process of writing the book.
Okay, yeah. I guess you could say I just felt moved. I've always been a writer. I've always enjoyed writing, and I guess you could say that there was just something here that felt moved to express part of the journey, the seeking. That part of the book describes how it was a little bit. There's a sort of a personal touch to it, how it was a little bit for me, the seeking, and how it was as a seeker, and the frustrations and the futility of that. But it came out quite naturally. Some of it was prompted by just things as they would come up, thoughts, ideas, conversations. One or two people I was talking to at the time who were asking questions, and it was written really very quickly. It's all I can say about that. Really, it just seemed to come out.
Like writing itself.
Yes, in a way, yeah.
I have a question. I have a question from Kane. Kane asked, "Hello, can you ask Neil what happens to the ego, and if it does with the me?"
Well, I'm not really sure what's meant by ego. I think ego is really just a projection of the self, in that sense. And of course, what's being pointed to is there isn't a self. So in that sense, there isn't really an ego as such. I think it's just a bit of a story. It's a bit of a. It's almost like it's almost like that sort of projection of self, a sense of self. So yeah, it's just a story, and it does really just seem to be something that happens in the dream. You know, thinking about I have an ego, or I have to overcome my ego, or I have to get rid of my ego. There's no one to have an ego in the first place.
Thank you, Neil. It reminds me of that quote from Alan Watts. I'm butchering a quote butcher. He said, the greatest ego trip is getting rid of your ego.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, King corrected his question here. Can you ask Neil what happens to the ego, and if it dies with the me? Does the ego die with the me?
Well, who would have an ego? That's the thing, and that's ultimately what's recognized with liberation, if you so-called liberation, is that there was never anyone having an ego. So actually, this whole idea of I am and I have an ego is just a dream in the first place. So that there actually isn't an ego to fall away in that sense. And as far as being able to work on something like an ego, who would be working on getting rid of their ego? That's the thing.
Brilliant. Thank you. Eva has a question. Eva, do you want to ask Neil, or do you want me to ask this question? I'll ask the question. Hi, Neil. When you heard Jim talking about this, did you have any doubts of what is he talking about? Did you hear the message immediately?
So for me, when I was a seeker, it was resonated with straight away. Yeah. I really can't say much more about that. It was something much beyond Neil the seeker. It wasn't something I could understand. It wasn't something that I could grasp. And I know a lot of people talk about with this type of message as being a seeker, having a real kind of love-hate relationship with it. It's compelling, but it is frustrating for the individual. Yeah.
Thank you. Henrik has a question. Henrik, do you want to unmute yourself? I'll ask a question. It's a lot of shy people today. Do you identify any situation or thought that was the start of the shift that happens to you? Any peak of suffering or any or other situation?
No, because I mean, what you're talking about really is some kind of a process, that there is some kind of that there is something happens or something that can happen to prompt an apparent shift, and that's just not the case. We're talking about a revealing of what is already, in a way, but not for someone. So in that sense, there wasn't a thought, there wasn't any kind of a process that brought this about. Indeed, there isn't a process that can bring this about, because it is already itself. It is already, and again, as I talked about before, that's the startling thing, is it is already, and always was and always is, so to speak.
Brilliant. Thank you. John has a question. John, if you would like to unmute yourself, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Neil.
Hi, John.
Just had a quick question. You mentioned that, I mean, nobody can stop the seeking, because there is no one to seek. I've had that a moment where there was a realization that there's nothing to get because there's no one to get it. And that simplicity was there. Yet in the story or supposed time afterwards, I still show up to meetings like this. So sometimes the mental narrative can say, well, then why are you here looking at this? Am I seeking still? Do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're describing what could be called a glimpse.
Yes.
Yeah, so there can be glimpses of this, but of course a glimpse is only recognized as being a glimpse with the returning of the me, because the nature of the individual and the nature of the me is to claim what's happening for itself. So if a glimpse was apparently what was happening, the individual will then come in and claim that glimpse as being something that has happened to me. And it will then try and make sense of that and turn it into some kind of a narrative or story. So I don't know, is that what you're describing?
Yes. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. But whoever's here, the showing up to these meetings has nothing to do with anybody here anyway, right?
Well, no, because the suggestion is there is no one here.
Right. Okay, thank you. That's all.
I mean, and I mean that quite literally. There's no one attending this meeting. No one actually got up this morning. No one made coffee. No one stretched and yawned. No one went to work or whatever the day was today. No one chose to attend this meeting, and there's actually no one here, and that's already the case. I understand there may be a sense that there is an I am here, and I did all of those things today, and that I am some way responsible for all of those happenings. But it's a total dream. It's an illusion. It's just not actually happening.
Thank you. That was epic. There's a question here from Kane. Kane asks, is love and hate the same thing?
Well, in the dream, love and hate seem to be opposites. There is only unconditional love. That's already what's happening. And that doesn't subscribe to anything or to any event or to any happening or to any feeling or emotion or thought or watching the news and having an opinion or a view on what's going on in the world at the moment. The individual lives in this world of duality. But just to be clear, the duality, love and hate is a duality, but the duality is that I am an individual who's separate from what's happening, or separate from the world, separate from the whole. And because it has this experience of being separate from the whole, it then looks at everything from this sort of perspective of realness, in that sense that there is real love and there is real hate and there is real good and there is real bad. because that is that experience that seems to come out of that separation. But really, that whole kind of polarity of love and hate really is just something that seems to appear in a dream story. But but that's not to say that this has become entirely neutral, or doesn't have opinions or views, doesn't have preferences. Yeah, that's just how it is. That's just what's happening.
Thank you, Neil. I have another question from, no, this is a new question from Lawrence. What is the life and living?
Well, me experiences itself as having a life. And actually, the other part to that suggestion that there is no one here is that there is, of course, no one as having a life. So there is no one as having a life, and there is no one as living. You could say that aliveness is what's happening, that this is aliveness appearing to happen. And I would say part of that experience of individuality seems to cover over that aliveness in that sense. But there's no one as living, and there's no one as having a life as such. That's the nature of the individual. It claims everything, including life and living. I have a life, I am living.
Thank you. Elena asks, what is energy?
Well, you could say energy is all there is, that this is just energy arising. It's energy forming. It's energy being a laptop. It's energy being words, thoughts, feelings, emotions, noises coming from outside the window. So you could say everything is energy. But for me, that makes this kind of sound like a thing. You know, everything is energy in that sense. But this energy is unknowable. It's indescribable. It's not something that can be known, because, of course, the apparent shift in liberation is a shift from that which knows, or a knowing, into unknowing or unknowableness. There's no distinctions. So on the one hand, you could say all there is energy, but then on the other hand, you could say it's just a story, really.
Awesome, thank you. Kane asks, can personal judgment arise in liberation?
Not personal judgment, no, because there are no persons, and there's no one, there isn't a person as judging. Judgments. I don't know about judgments. There can be opinions on things, there can be views on things, but there isn't a personal judgment as such. I have to say there's nothing happening here that isn't happening there. It's just that there's apparently something happening that isn't happening here. So everything seems to sort of continue as a function in a way, but just not for anyone, or not in a personal sense anymore. And in that sense, everything that arises is empty. So whatever thought or whatever feeling may arise, or view, it's completely empty and actually completely neutral. How it can be completely neutral and also seem to have views on things, I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you. Yasmin asks, who or what is having preferences?
Well, preferences are just preferences. So, I mean, maybe we could say a story about there being conditioning for preferences. Preferences just seem to be naturally occurring, arising preferences for things.
Henry, I realize I'm on mute. This is from Henrik. Is the shift to liberation a question of luck?
Of luck? No, I don't think so, because it is already. It's not actually a happening that happens. So it's not a case of someone getting lucky and and not being lucky in that sense. There are, I mean, who can say? Who can say? It doesn't come about as any kind of result or any kind of consequence to anything. Because there are people who've been going to see speakers who talk in this way for 20 years, and they're still in that dream of duality, that they are a person and that they're still seeking, and that's because they still think there's something to get. I guess it would be fair to say that this was struck by the obviousness of it suddenly, but luck isn't a word I would really use in that way, because it makes it sound special. I'm the lucky one. It's just not about that at all in the end. There's just nothing here. I use this word in the book. It's actually complete poverty in that sense, but also an abundance.
Thank you so much. It's like saying winning the biggest lottery and getting nothing.
Yeah, but there's no one to win the lottery.
But no one also to win the lottery. That's
and there
right.
wasn't a lottery to win.
That's right. What does it mean when you say it is empty?
Well, again, it just can't be described. I think what seems to arise with the experience of being an individual is a sense of presence or awareness. It has a reality, it has a solidity to it. And that with the arising of that awareness, that sense of I, that kind of solidity seems, that realness seems to arise in everything else. So what was the question again?
Question is there's sorry, what does it mean when you say empty? Maybe the word empty.
Yeah, so that sort of solidity arises within everything else with that experience. So of course, when that experience appears to crumble or collapse, or that illusory experience appears to crumble or collapse, that kind of solidity also seems to fall away in that sense. So there's nothing as being fixed or real in that sense. So there's no, because there's no longer a center, there can be no longer be any edges or boundaries or any other centers in that sense. So it just seems to be as it naturally is, which is just spaciousness in that sense. But it's not just empty, it's empty fullness that we're talking about here, of course.
Thank you. Ken asks, is there still an interest in Tony, Jim, and Andreas?
Well, no, I don't go to meetings if that's what you're asking. No, because no, not really.
Thank you. Oh, this is the classic question. This is the number one question that everyone asks in any of this meeting. I'll be surprised if this did not come up. This is from Martin. Is there such a thing as free will or choice?
No, what we're talking about is there's no one to have free will or choice. Yeah, for there to be real choice, there would have to be two possibilities existing at the same time. There would have to be a reality where I drink a cup of tea and a reality where there isn't drinking a cup of tea. And both would have to exist, and then that would be a duality. There is only what is or what is appearing. So either drinking a cup of tea is happening or it isn't. There isn't the two things existing at the same time in that way. And there's essentially what we're talking about is there's no one to have that choice. You could say that there's just what comes up and there is a responding to that. But there can't be another what is. There can't be another this. There's only what's happening. So for there to be a choice, there would have to be two of this for there to be a real choice.
Brilliant. Thank you. Elena asked, why for some people is needed so many years as a seeker? Is it blockage?
No, it's not blockage, because there's nothing blocking this. It is already. The seeking can tend to reinforce that sense of separation. And very often when the seeker goes to a teacher who tells them to do this and this and this and this, and give them a list of things to do in order to become enlightened or liberated, that can tend to reinforce that seeking experience in that sense. Yeah.
Thank you. There's another question here. So is the emptiness related to the absolute and the fullness to the appearance? This is from Eva.
Sorry, read that one again, Emerson.
Yeah. So is the emptiness related to the absolute and the fullness to the appearance? So is the emptiness related to the absolute and its fullness to the appearance? Does that make sense?
Well, there is only empty fullness. It's empty as being full, in that sense. So, but it doesn't relate to anything. You could say that this is the absolute, in that it is already complete and that it needs nothing, in that sense. But there isn't anything sort of relating to anything else, in that sense. There's nothing here living in relationship to what's happening in any way, and there doesn't appear to be relationship between what's arising in that sense, because it's just the whole arising as whatever that is.
Perfect. Thank you. This is from Henrik. What do you say about the utility of the spiritual teacher?
The utility of the spiritual teacher?
Like, what's the use of a spiritual teacher?
Well, I suppose they can be helpful for some people in that sense. What's being suggested here is that teachings can't bring one closer to what is already, because there is no one to move closer to that. There is no one who can become, and this is already what's longed for, and this is already home. No one ever left. In the end, that's what's seen, that's what's recognized, that there was no one to leave and no one to become lost. So there is nothing to be gotten from a teaching, because the suggestion is it is already. The natural it is already this, as whatever is happening or appearing to happen right now. It is already. And the other thing is, this is unknowable. You can't teach unknowing. The experience of being a me is to know. It's a knowing energy. It needs to know what's happening, as a way to try and feel like it's in control of what's happening. It keeps it feeling safe or secure to know. If I can know enough things, then I'll be okay. If I know what's happening, then I'll be okay. And this is unknowing. So that knowing energy falls away. So what's left is unknowing. And you can't teach unknowing. Something would have to be known in order for it to be taught. Teaching is about knowledge. You can't know this. There's no one to know this.
Perfect. Oh, question from Kane here. Is death a celebration?
Is death a celebration? Well, there's nothing to die. Because there's nothing else having life already. I know that sometimes the word dying can be used as to refer to the end of that apparent experience of being an individual. The individual can die, the seeker can die. But no, it's not. The seeker or the individual imagines that the end of that apparent experience is going to be a big party and a celebration in that sense, and it just isn't. It just isn't. It's a recognition that this was home, and it was always home, and no one ever left. There was no one ever to leave. It's the recognition that it is already. It's the end of an apparent experience that really feels like it's happening, but in actuality never happened.
Thank you for that. This one is from Yasmin. Do you see the dream you had last night in the same way as the waking dream when you say it is all an illusion?
No. What's being described as an illusory is being a separate individual, or being a person who is separate from the whole. That's illusory. You could say this is an appearance, that this is just what appears. But I wouldn't call this an illusion. This still looks both ways before it crosses a busy street. There's that still seems to happen. So if this was an illusion, this wouldn't do that.
This one seems like a follow-up question from Elena. She goes, for people who died many times but still me comes back. Want me to repeat it? For people who died many times but still me comes back.
Yeah, so I think we're talking about glimpses again then, aren't we? Well, there can be glimpses, as I mentioned before, there can be glimpses, but that's not really the so-called dying of liberation. In the end, it's about the end of the glimpses in that sense. So really, there's no one to have a glimpse in that sense, but then what me does is it comes back and claims that glimpse. So really a glimpse is about a returning of the me, because what's recognized in that dying, if we want to use that word, is there was never anyone as living, so there was never anyone to die.
Thank you. Brilliant. Can there be a sadness if a loved one apparently dies? This is from Kane.
Yeah, I don't see why not. There could be a sadness. Anything can arise. But again, that's already the case. Obviously, when there's an individual, then sadness is being made into something personal. But yes, anything can arise, sadness can arise, but then a loved one dying, so I'm assuming we're talking about death of the body in this sense, then that would be just what's happening. So there wouldn't be worry in any way.
Thank you. This one is from Mark. Mark says, mine says I am in the world. Silence says nothing. Can you comment on the efficacy of being that which I am, referring to silence as being that which I am without that thought? Want me to repeat it?
Yeah.
Okay. Mine says I am in the world. Silence says nothing. Can you comment on the efficacy of being that which I am, referring to silence as being that which I am without that thought?
Well, I am is a dream. So any experience within that I amness would be that dream of duality, that I am here and or that this has something to do with a thought, or the thought that I am, or there are teachings that will sort of point to the I am is the space within which thought arises, or I am that which is looking or observing. That's still in the dream of duality. So there isn't an I am.
Thank you. This one is from Elena. What is the difference between glimpses and death?
Well, a glimpse would be a glimpse of unknowing. So it could be that just that illusion of knowing falls away. But it isn't really a death, because me's kind of still there, really. It just comes back and claims what that was. So death, in the way that we're talking about it in liberation, is the end of all of that. It's the end of seeking. But again, with that apparent end is a recognition that it was never happening, and there was never anything to die.
Thank you. Mark adds his question, the question before about the I am, which would come out of noise. There isn't an I am, but is there silence?
There's silence being noise, and all noise is silence. So this isn't about becoming detached or about calming the mind or about not having thoughts. It's not about training the monkey mind. It has nothing to do with that whatsoever. This is the end of the sense of I am. So obviously what comes with that end of the sense of I am is the end of the sense that everything else is also.
Brilliant, thank you. I don't have any more questions, but I'm going to ask a question. Did you get that certificate of enlightenment that we did after the last interview?
Not yet. No. I'm
because
waiting.
you haven't paid yet.
I haven't paid $1 million, and I'm waiting for the guild leading to.
I'll send you the receipt, and we'll send it to you right away. Oh, this one is from Rob. What do you do for a living?
Well, I work in health and social care.
This one is from Elena. How is to live without this sense of existence?
Well, it's already living without a sense of existence. It's just what's happening. There is just what's happening. It's impossible to describe. It's very simple. It's very ordinary. Existing seems to take up a lot of energy, a lot of thought, and a lot of effort. That's just what's happening now. Just as it is naturally itself, as it arises. It's not being. There's nothing trying to fit it into a story anymore. That's just what's happening.
Thank you. This one is from Martin. Is awareness the dream of duality, or I am?
Well, I am and awareness are both the same thing. So as far as this is concerned, really awareness is the duality. Because for there to be awareness, it needs something to be aware of. It needs either I am aware, or I am aware that I am aware. If there is just pure awareness, then what would be left for it to be aware of? So without that duality, awareness ceases to function. So really awareness is the duality. It starts with the awareness of here, I am here. And awareness seems to be what bridges the gap of separation. So I think some people with awareness teachings and awareness type practices, they can have a sense of filling the space between this duality in that way with that awareness. But it's temporary. What we're talking about is the end of that duality, or the end of that space within which awareness needs to fill or be. So there's no awareness in that sense. Awareness always also talks about a knowing. For me, it's got a knowing energy about it as well. I am aware, or there is something that awareness is aware of. It has to be aware of something in order for it to be awareness. There are no things. There's no separate positions from which awareness can be or get to.
Brilliant. Thank you, Neil. I have a question from Susan. Susan, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hi, Susan.
Yeah, hi. So awareness, you could also say you could be aware of nothing. You could just be aware. There's just awareness, or you could call it maybe just knowing. There's not a knower, there's not something known, there's just knowing. And that's like, as we live right now, we are just the knowing of what happens, which ultimately doesn't even happen, but we're still right now in a dream of knowing this that happens moment by moment. So in a way, maybe awareness does work just like knowing, like what if you had to pick one word of what you are in this dream, what would you say if you can't use awareness or aware or knowing?
Well, I wouldn't say it's knowing or awareness, because knowing is the experience of the individual. So actually, in the end, with the apparent collapse of that separate I or the self, then there is nothing left to be aware in that sense or to know. It's a knowing energy. So this is unknowing. And to answer your question about what word would I use, there isn't a word that can describe this. There is, in the end, there's no one left to know this or to be aware in that way.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying knowing instead of knower. I mean, there's.
Well, for there to be knowing, there would have to be a knower. There can't be a knowing.
We are unknowing. So
this
then,
is unknowing.
So there is unknowing happening, or I know but that's also just a word, right? But it's like,
sure.
Obviously, we are all here in this dream happening, and there's something that knows, because you can also be a knower of nothing when you're dead. Then there's just nothing happening. You're just aware. You're just knowing nothing, but you're full in that, like the empty fullness you talk about, right? So, yeah.
Yes, but it can't be knowing. It can't be known. And there's actually no one dreaming. There's no one having a dream of knowing.
Right. There's just the one God on knowing. Yeah, call it what unknowing, call it what you want, right?
In order to know this, there would have to be a separate position from which to know it.
Yeah.
There is no separation. So there's no position to be able to know this from.
Right. But there is this one source, so call it what you want, that is manifesting all this, or reflection of that.
I wouldn't say so.
There,
No, this is timeless. So there isn't a source, and there isn't a beginning to this. It is the infinite.
Right. So the infinite, yeah.
So again, for there to be a source, there would have to be a real beginning and a real end to this appearance. And there just isn't. It's timeless and it's infinite.
Right. So we can call it eternity or infinity, but so there's something. I know it's not a thing, but so it's nothing, right? Okay, there's nothing. But and then there's one more thing about thoughts, because every single thought, and like everything else manifested, thought is a manifestation, but every single thought is a story, right? Because it's just what's happening. So whatever thought you have about what's happening, that's just the story going on, so life is really just storytelling, and
well, life is the story. Well,
yeah.
The story is I am and I have a life. Thought is just a function.
Yeah.
It's really, thought is entirely innocuous. This has nothing to do with a change of thought, a detaching from thought, or a new thought, a revelation coming up in that sense. This isn't thought created. It just has nothing to do with thoughts in that sense, in that way.
Yeah. So it's like the thoughts are just happening, like everything else is just happening.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why every single thing in our lives, like this is storytelling. I mean, everything from conversations to thoughts to feelings to the whole world. I mean, every single thing is a storytelling. We humans have a tendency to think, oh, this is not this is the real thing. But every single thing, everything is storytelling. I mean, we are trapped in a storytelling manifestation, and that's fine because it's kind of fun, right? But that's what it is,
Well, it becomes a storytelling because me lives in the story.
Right.
When there is no me, then it's just what's happening.
Right. But what's happening is actually also a story. It's a dream. It's just happening day moment by moment. But it's also a story. You know what I'm saying? It's like we can't get out of the story. You know, we're trapped in a story. I mean, which is nice, I think. But it doesn't matter what we think about it. It's just happening, and everything is a story. This is a story. Liberation is a story. Everything is a story.
In a way, but there's no one to be in that story. So what would be recognizing it as a story? What would be turning it into a story?
Yeah, that's just from our point of view, the human point.
From the point of view of the individual, then yes, everything does get turned and taken into a story. And yes, there can be, you can use the word story and say, well, liberation is just a story. And liberation is just a story because that there is a me is the story. So in order for there to be a real falling away of the me and a real happening called liberation, that story of me would have to be real, which it isn't. So
right.
This whole idea that you know that there is a thing called liberation is a story because me is the story. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, and even everything is a story. Like it's just all even realizing you're not, that it is a story, that you are not in separate, and it's all just knowing. And I mean, it's just all story, and we can just enjoy it because we can't leave the story no matter what we do. You know, I mean, life is happening. We are here, and life's happening, and life is the story. And yeah. So anyway, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you there, Susan. Hello, how are you doing?
Thank you.
I have a question here from Freddie. This is who has thoughts?
Well, no one has thoughts. Thoughts are just what's happening. So you could say thoughts are just the whole arising as thoughts. They are just this arising as thoughts. So no one has thoughts.
Thank you. This one is from Henrik. What is the word that describes better what you are talking about?
Okay. There isn't a word to describe it. I think some words come a bit closer. Words used like empty fullness or empty spaciousness, the absolute, the infinite. Some words come closer than others. Unknowing. But there just isn't a word to describe this. This is where words just fall far short of the reality, the apparent reality that this is. There's just no way to describe it. What we're sharing, or what's being shared here, is something completely energetic. It has nothing to do with language in that sense. It's completely energetic. So it's indescribable.
Thank you. This question from Elena. Where fear disappear? Can you clarify that, Elena? Where does fear disappear? I'm not really sure what she's asking here.
Does fear disappear? Where does fear disappear?
Yeah, where fear disappear? I don't know if you want to clarify that, Elena. But
yeah, in the death, let's say, in the final liberation, if fear really disappear, worry disappear?
No, not necessarily. No. No, fear can arise. Worry, I don't know what to call it. Worry. Concern, perhaps. Worry sounds to me like something that's kind of ongoing and accumulative. This is immediate. So fear could be a natural response to something, like being chased down the road. It might be fear in that sense, or but it would be a natural response. So a natural fear can arise in that sense. But worry, I think the individual's a bit of a worrier. Worries about its life and its responsibilities and the things it imagines it's responsible for, in that sense. So worry, I'm not really sure about that. But fear can arise, yeah, sure, why not? Yeah.
Thank you, Neil. Yasmin asks, would you say that there is a place for duality at all? Or do you see non-duality as the ultimate truth?
There's no such thing as non-duality, because there isn't an actual duality. For there to be a real non-duality, there would actually have to be a real duality. And that's what's being suggested. There is no duality to become non-dual. So actually, non-duality has no place whatsoever as a subject, even, or it's a concept. Doesn't mean anything at all.
There's a question here from Mark. How did you get this clarity?
I don't have any clarity. I have, so this has no idea what's being said.
Thank you. Cade goes, is there more laughter?
Yeah, not really. There's no real difference in that sense. There's a lot of laughter. I suppose you could say that the whole human drama is seen through, or the imaginary, the apparent human drama is seen through. So I guess there is a relaxation and a tremendous psychological relaxation that comes along with that release of that sort of contracted energy, that tension. But laughter, yeah. Neil Denham laughed when he was a seeker, and there's still laughter now.
Martin asks, there is something now.
Is there something now?
Can you explain that, Martin, if you want to unmute yourself? Okay, I'll ask the next question. There is any difference between the human being and an animal?
Not in the sense that you're thinking of. It does seem to be that only human beings tend to have this sense of I am or individuality. It only seems to be the human being that seeks as a result of that sense of here, of that sense of I. So no, I wouldn't say there's any difference really in that sense. You could say this is just a human animal and there is just a functioning, lights and biological clockwork in that sense. I mean, this is obviously, there's a more complex, nuanced brain in that sense. Apparently, that's kind of a story, but no, I wouldn't say there's a difference as such. There's no difference between anything really. Everything is just no thing appearing as whatever it may appear to be. There's no thing appearing as animals or as apparent human beings. Yeah.
Thank you. It's from Yasmin. If there's no duality, why do you look before you cross the road?
It's just what happens. I'd prefer not to get hit by a car. The hospitals are quite busy at the moment. There's just a looking both ways. There's a natural sense of preservation. The body will do what it needs to do to naturally preserve itself. All apparent life does that.
Thank you. This one is from Martin. There is something now, isn't there?
There is something now.
Isn't there?
No. No, this is no thing. There isn't a something. There are no things. And that was quite startling at first. There's no things. There isn't a something that becomes a no thing. There is just no thing. Apparently being something.
There is something.
In what sense?
There is something now. Sorry, trying to unmute. There is something now. It exists.
There's an appearance. There's what appears.
There is something, and it's there.
I'm not sure. Do you mean something that's happening there?
Yeah, something. I mean,
Okay.
when I open my eyes in the morning, there's something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Call it awareness if you like.
Yeah.
But you got to call it something.
Well, yes. So, okay. So, yeah, within the dream of I am, there is an apparent something, something that is aware.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, but that's in the dream. That's in the dream of I am. Actually, what's left in the end is nothing. That's not nothing. It's no thing. There are no things.
Okay.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Neil. I have a question here. Oh, Andrea goes, what is the name of your book? Can you show it to us?
I don't have one to hand, actually. It's called Already Everything, and it's available on Amazon.
And this one is, what can I do to? This is from Henrik. What can I do to feel love in my heart?
Oh, all there is unconditional love. You don't need to do anything. There isn't a you that can do anything. But just to be clear, when we say unconditional love, this doesn't walk around feeling in love with everything all the time. It's unconditional. Yeah.
This one is from Elena. Elena goes, Brahmana died 3 times.
Did he? That's unfortunate for him. I'm afraid I don't know much
Third
about
time's
him.
the charm.
Did he? Okay.
No, I don't know too. I don't know this one.
Oh, I didn't. Sorry, I didn't.
Elena just said that Ramana died 3 times.
Did he? Okay.
Thank you, Elena. And Kane goes, do hobbies and interests change?
No, but there doesn't seem to be a pursuing of hobbies and interests in the same way anymore. I think this is something I've noticed about the lockdown. A lot of people, a lot of the individual seems to be really affected by the lockdown, because it's not able to go and do the things that it feels it needs to do in order to get that sense of worth and fulfillment, and in that sense, and so and it struggles with that. But yeah, there's no real change in that sense. Yeah, so I mean, hobbies and interests are still there, but I did notice that a lot of activities that were based in seeking don't seem to happen anymore.
Rob asks, is there less ambition at work?
Yeah, I think that would be fair to say. There's this, yeah, because there's nothing that needs to change about what's happening. There could be a response to a need. I mean, why shouldn't there be a response to, if one is working and not earning enough money, or would prefer to earn more money? Why shouldn't there be a response to that in a changing job, or a learning skills within the workplace to do that? But there's no one doing that. So there could be just a response and something happening in that sense, apparently happening in that sense.
Julie goes, ha ha ha. This one is from Henrik. Is the infinite also a universal joke?
Is the infinite a universal joke? Well, in a way it is. I mean, I'm joking when I say it's a joke. You don't know really whether to laugh or cry in the end, when it's recognized that it was just never really happening. But yes, yeah, I guess you could say that in a way. But no one's having a joke. No one's having a joke with us.
Thank you. This one I like. Before that, does life flash before your eyes? from
No,
Kane.
because no, that's a sweet question, but no,
It
because
is.
there's no life actually happening. What's recognized in the end that there was never a life happening in that sense. There is just this, there's just what is, which is immediate, which is whole, and just naturally itself.
Thank you. If anyone else has any question, let me know. Neil, what are your plans? Are you writing another book? Should do some more of these meetings. This is pretty epic, right?
Yeah. Well, there's some thoughts perhaps, yeah, about doing some more writing. Hasn't been much coming up really at the moment, and some thoughts maybe to holding some meetings in the future at some stage, but nothing sort of concrete set in place, so to speak, at the moment.
Have you had any other meetings before this?
No.
No. Wow. This is pretty awesome. John has a question here. John, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about physical pain? It seems that when there's physical pain, there's a tendency for the me energy or whatever you want to call it to be stronger. Can you talk a little bit about physical pain?
Yeah, sure. Well, physical pain is just physical pain. I think what we're talking about is the story here, really, in that me lives in that there's a narrative within the story that there should or there shouldn't be physical pain. So it wrestles with that physical pain in that way. But physical pain can arise, but it's just physical pain. It's not pain as belonging to anyone. It's not personal. There's nothing to be done with that pain other than maybe take painkillers or go and see a doctor.
Thank you so
But
much, Neil.
it's not
Go ahead.
personal. Yeah, there's yeah, it's just pain is just pain and can just arise in that sense.
Thank you, Neil. If anyone has any other questions, let me know. You can raise your hand or you can type in a question. And there's one. This one is this one is from Kane. It's a cute question. Are star signs and mystics just from the story?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as is religion, as is science, as is philosophy. They're just what seem to arise within the story or within the dream of I am. Because again, it's about the individual. It's a knowing energy. It wants to know what's happening. It needs to know. So it comes up with all kinds of methods and ways to do that. Not that there's anything right or wrong in any of that. There's no suggestion that there's anything right or wrong with any of those things. I personally am very grateful for general anesthetic. I don't know if anyone's ever had surgery, but I'm personally very grateful for scientists who invented general anesthetic and antibiotics.
Likewise, yeah. This one is from Yasmin. A lot of aliveness here today. Thanks.
Oh.
Oh, this one is from Rose. What is your plan or goal for the future?
Oh, I don't have one. There isn't a future. So there's nothing that needs a plan. There's nothing to have a plan or make plans. There literally is just what's happening. There is only this. And fundamentally, that's the message. There is only this, what's happening, which actually can include, because there's nothing exclusive from this, the experience that there is something else and that there is a future and that there is something that needs to make plans. Having said that, plans seem to happen. We plan to have this meeting at 5 o'clock today. That was the plan, but that's, again, just what's happening. This is immediate as it arises.
Thank you. Can science ever discover this? Eva's asking.
Oh, who knows? Science is about knowing, though. So behind the science, there will always be the seeking that needs to know what this is or what this is about. If science ever does discover this, they won't know they've discovered it because it's unknowable.
Brilliant. Thank you. The sense of a self is a misinterpretation of what is.
An interpretation of what is.
Misinterpretation.
Oh, a
The sense of a self
misinterpretation.
is a misinterpretation of what is.
Yeah, but by the self. It's the self misinterpreting that it is a self. What is doesn't misinterpret things. There's nothing unnatural about that experience of separation. There's no suggestion that there's anything right or wrong in that, or that that's good or bad. So you could say that that is this appearing as that sense of separation in that sense. But obviously what seems to come with that sense of separation is this whole sort of burden that comes with that, and that whole angst that comes out of that sense of separation, which is really what's the result of the seeking, the looking for something that is going to make this feel whole and complete and fulfilled. So this never found fulfillment. You know, this isn't about this becoming fulfilled or becoming something. It's the end of the need for it to be fulfilled. You know, nothing is found or lost in that sense.
Henrik asked, do you use the mind for something?
Well, no, there isn't a mind. I mean, it's just a story. It's just a story. Me has an experience of a mind. I couldn't even tell you what a mind is. What is a mind? Show me your mind. Describe what your mind is. It's just a story. This has nothing to do with the mind.
Mark asks, it is taken personally erroneously.
I'm sorry, Emerson, say that again, please.
Yeah, let me repeat that. Or Mark, if you want to add to that one, it seems like an incomplete. Is it taken personally erroneously? Is that right, Mark?
It went along with the earlier.
Can you repeat the whole
sense
thing,
of
Mark?
self? There is the sense of self.
Yeah, I think I know what you're asking now. Thank you. Yeah, it is erroneous. Absolutely, that there is a self. Yeah, and this sense of self. Yeah, not as in it's incorrect, or some kind of an error. There's nothing erroneous in that sense. It's erroneous in the sense that it's a misunderstanding.
That's a complete loop. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for that question. Eva asked, do you have dreams at night? If yes, are they different than before?
Yeah, there's still dreams, but I'm not in them anymore.
This one is from Kane. Can frustration arise?
Sure. Yeah, anything can arise. Being frustrated, honking your horn at traffic, swearing at your laptop when it's kicked you out of your remote desktop for the 7th time in one day. Absolutely.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Please, raise your hand and mute yourself if you have any questions. Or you can also type the question. We should do this again, Neil. This is fun.
Yeah.
You're getting the hang of it?
Yeah.
It's fun. I like it. I like it a lot. If there's any more, no more questions, just a reminder that next week we're going to have Joan Tollefson. And then we also have a Naho Water retreat coming on the 12th and the 13th. There's a Naho meeting tomorrow. There's a Tony Parsons meeting tomorrow. Please ask if you have any questions. Oh yes, there's another question here. Is there only either bliss or not bliss? This is from Martin.
Well, this has nothing to do with bliss. Not in the way that the seeker would think. No, it's So as far as I'm concerned, really, that's in that same sort of has a religiosity to it, sort of this kind of idea of bliss and nirvana, in that sense. No, this doesn't live in a permanent state of bliss. No, it's just not about that. But the suggestion is it is already. Everything that's happening or appearing to happen there is this, appearing as that. It is the whole appearing as whatever it is arising there, including the idea that this has to be about bliss, including the sense of I, including the experience of being an individual in the world. Even that is this wholeness. Even that is this infiniteness. Even that is the absolute appearing as that. There's nothing that isn't this, even seeking.
That was brilliant. Thank you. Henry asked, are retreats useful?
Are they useful? No, not towards achieving liberation, no. Because again, the suggestion is it's already the case. So going to a retreat or a residential may happen, and yeah, but no, there's nothing that can bring about what is already. Which is why this doesn't go on residentials or retreats. Yeah.
Yasmin goes, this was lovely. I agree. Thank you. Nothing is always so exciting. Oh, thank you. Looking forward to looking forward to Joan Tollefson. Well, thank you so much, Neil. Why don't we get you to have oh, there's another message here. Sorry. So this message is that there is nothing to do. There's nothing to do it. There's no benefit to doing and no benefit to not doing. All stories arise out of this quiet.
No, this message is there is no one to do any of those things. Already. That's already the case.
Thank you so much, Neil. That was very clear. Neil's book is available on Amazon. It's called Already Everything, a little book on seeking and liberation. Is it available now for North America? Because I think the last time we talked, it was only UK.
It is, yeah. It is available in Canada, yeah.
In Canada
yeah,
too, and the US. Okay.
It's on Amazon.com and the other derivatives of Amazon. Yeah, Amazon.co.uk. Yeah.
I'm just going to read something from the book. Me is the story, and the story is the me, which is why the me cannot move itself out of the story by coming to have a deeper understanding of itself. The idea that me can change the story is just another story. I really like that. Thank you so much. Again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. If there's no more questions, just a reminder that next week we have Joan Tollefson on Friday. And then on Sunday, we have Naho Wada for a virtual retreat. And then we also have, so every Friday now, so just mark your calendars, book some time off although there's no time. And we'll see you. Someone is asking, is there a book yet? The book is called Already Everything, a little book on seeking and liberation. And Anita has a question before we go. Go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, sometimes it looks like a lot of people are living in a way, action, reaction. Yeah, can you say something about that?
Living in an action reaction.
Yeah.
Well, all there is an apparent response or energy responding, appearing to respond to energy or to what arises. But really, what this message is that there is no one acting or reacting to anything.
Mm-hmm.
But you could say that a person would react to something because they have a belief system, or they have a narrative within the story, and if something arises that doesn't fit in, like coronavirus. Something arises that doesn't fit into the story or the narrative. There can be lots of reactions to that from that position of this should or shouldn't be. This isn't a part of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The question is there an oh sorry, go ahead, Anita.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. There was a colleague, and I sometimes I feel intimidated by him, and then I think it's better to go in silence than to react.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what the individual does. It sort of tries to come up with ways to deal with what arises, or it imagines it does anyway. Deal with what arises and how it should and shouldn't react to things. And that's because it lives within that personal narrative of what it thinks is good and bad and right and wrong. I have to say, this is nothing to do with becoming in some way pure or perfect, and never being angry or never reacting to something. Just isn't about that at all. The message is that there is already no one there choosing to react in a certain way or not to what arises or what's happening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Nice seeing you. Is there an ebook version of your book?
Yes, there is. Yeah,
It's on Kindle, right? On Amazon as well?
that's right. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then Rose, nothing can be done. Your colleague cannot change.
My
Can you
colleagues.
Do-
No, I'm not sure I entirely understand the question.
Yeah, go if you have if you want to add to that question, Rose, or if you want to mute yourself, you don't have to show your face if that's okay. I'll read it again. Nothing can be done. I mean, people cannot change.
Well, apparently they do. Apparently, a person can work on themselves, have therapy, make changes in a way. The suggestion is there's no one actually doing that or to do that, but you could say that there can be within the story apparent change. The individual does seem to be able to it does seem to be able to change the narrative. Well, not the individual can't, but the narrative can seem to change in some ways for some people.
There's a follow-up question here. What kind of therapy you recommend?
I wouldn't recommend, or I wouldn't either recommend or not recommend therapy. Yeah.
And there's a comment here. Beautiful talk with a smiley face with hearts in our eyes.
Oh, perfect.
I agree. All right. Well, if there's any question, please, text, you message your question, raise your hand. If not, we're going to go again. We can go for hours here, but if you have any questions, just let me know. If not, just a couple of things again. Tomorrow there's a meeting with Tony Parsons at 4 p.m. UK time, and there's also a Naho Owada meeting. Do you have any other meetings coming up soon, Neil?
Nothing planned, but
we should do another one.
Yeah, that would be good. I do have a Facebook page where if a meeting is going to happen, it will appear on the Facebook page at some point.
I'm going to add that right now, so everybody can visit it. So everyone, I've just posted Neil's Already Everything Facebook page. If you guys want to like it, to find out if Neil has any meetings. And I have one last question here from Ilya. Every time that I think there's no more question, there's another one that arises. Can core beliefs from childhood be changed?
Well, I think we're talking about conditioning rather than beliefs.
Mhm.
There's an apparent conditioning that happens. The individual has beliefs, but ultimately, in the end, as with that collapsing of the individual, apparent collapsing of the individual, all those beliefs seem to go with it as well. But I guess in the story, if you're talking about can an individual change their beliefs? Yeah, apparently they can.
Rob goes, adios, thanks. Thank you so much, Neil, for spending this almost an hour and a half with us answering questions. We should do this again. It's been a pleasure to have you. And also on YouTube, Neil has a couple of interviews. I posted this long interview that we did. When was that? A couple of months ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can also go to Neil's Facebook page that I just added there. If you have any last words, Neil.
No, not really. Just thank you for inviting me. And yeah, pleasure. And hopefully see some of you again sometime.
Thank you so much, Neil. Thank you so much, everyone. You can unmute yourselves. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you,
Thank you very
Emerson.
much. Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Excellent.
you.
Thank you. Awesome.
Thank you.
Epic.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you back next Saturday, next Friday for Joan Tollefson and then Naho's retreat.